Yeah, so thank you very much for being here. So yeah, I won't introduce myself because that would take too much of our time, and we have something more passionate in front of us for the next 30 minutes. So we are digging into resilience in teenagers and a little outline of what we are going to look at together. So already the definition of resilience is not as easy as it might sound. Then I will bring some why we need resilience, also supported by statistics and data, pre-pandemic and also current data I found. And then we will dig deeper into how we can develop resilience, especially for young people. And I will point out the Spark Resilience program that Ilona Boniwell up in your head when you hear the word, sorry for the spelling, but maybe it's to be there. So maybe in the chat, just one word that pops up when you hear the word resilience. Thriving, bouncing back, stand up again, growth. Great. Build on experience. Yes. Adaptability, optimistic, courage. Challenge, not threat. Okay, very inspiring. So more like, let's say, more technical. So it initially comes from physics, and it's the power or the ability of a material to return to its original position. So if we have a metal, it goes back again. So it's the ability to be bent and to restretch again. So applied to humans, it's the ability of a person to adjust or recover from different major life changes, adversity, etc. So this is the definition we can find in the dictionary online. And then the American Psychological Association defines it a little bit differently. So we have the process and the outcome of successfully adapting. So again, adaptability to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility. So we have our emotions, our thoughts and cognitions, and all our behaviors that are in there. And so the adjustment to external and internal demands. I really like also the let's say it's a kind of definition of the research in human development, which separates resilience into three elements. So we have recovery, which is the fact to bounce back to a baseline level of functioning after a stressful or traumatic life event. So very important is that resilience often means, okay, I have a big trauma and I'm bouncing back, but actually resilience, we need it in everyday life. For every little stress, we need some resilience in order to bounce back or to move forward. Then the second is sustainability. So which is the element which leads us to continue lead a meaningful life. So to continue on our track. And then the third one, which is growth. So you were mentioning, a lot of you were mentioning growth in connection to resilience. So it is the fact that finding more purpose in life than before a trauma or a stressful life event. So this is a very important element of resilience. So then we have it also a little bit more child-friendly, which I really like because we are speaking to teenagers. So giving them definitions of the dictionary probably is too difficult to absorb. So I really like the definition that when things go wrong, resilience is what helps you to cope and get through hard times. So the hard times means subjectively whatever might be a hard time for the person. So sometimes it makes you even stronger than you were before. So this is this growth or post-traumatic growth that comes into it. And so we can have very different ways of defining resilience. It's often equally used as coping, but it's also being strong on the inside of ourselves. So having our own capacities to bounce back, standing up for yourself, being able to cope with whatever life throws at you, etc. But let's not stay too much of time on the definition, but just to keep in mind that it's not easy to define. And I think every person on this earth has another vision of resilience. So let's go about the facts on mental health. So it's also connected to what Ilona was speaking yesterday. There we have like data from Anglo-Saxon countries, and those are pre-pandemic. So in general, depression is very common. So almost almost 2 out of 10 children at the end of high school suffer from depression. We have 1 in 11 by the end of middle school, and there are a lot more that have high subclinical levels of depression, which means that it's not enough severe to be diagnosed as depression, but already a lot of symptoms that lead to it. And what is quite shocking is that there are almost 80% that are underdetected or undertreated. So they're detected, but they do not receive any treatment. Why is it important to work on depression? Because there is a big or high correlation between children and adolescents that are depressed and that will have difficulties in their later life. So let's start earlier to prevent later suffering. So this is a little bit of data. And now, why is it so important? So we know there were different studies a lot around the world, but the consequences of mental health problems are huge. So we already start with the feelings. So low mood might lead to depression and then anxiety. So this is something very common. Then we have all the body-related problems, eating problems, body image issues, which are quite high, especially in girls in teenage age. And then we have everything that is related to learning and attention. So when you have mental health problems, then there is also difficulty of concentrating, poor academic achievement, etc. Social interactions also very, very important. So they will have difficulties in interacting with people, loneliness, so also something that will be directly connected to our current problem due to the pandemic. And then there's also much higher teenage pregnancy. And then on the behavioral level, we have they're much more at risk to develop aggressive, obsessive compulsive behavior, substance abuse related to just the presentation before, etc. And then we have also a high level of suicidal feelings, thoughts, and even suicide at the end of the day. So I hope I convinced everyone who was not convinced before that resilience is a key strengths or key capacity to develop in young children and young people. So the data is quite shocking about teenagers' mental health since the start of the pandemic. So the United States, France, and Belgium had more than twice as high prevalence of anxiety and depression in 15 to 24 years old children, teenagers, and adults. So they doubled, even tripled in some different countries. And you see also on the graph that this is for France because I'm living in France, so I'm directly connected to it. But you see that the symptoms of anxiety and depression, although they raised since the beginning of the pandemic for all population, the percentage is much higher among the young people. So you see the blue, dark blue line are the young ones, and the light blue one is the general population. So it's until 80% higher as of March 2021. So it's even more important now to develop resilience in this young population. Interesting also, so I just can invite you to read this report from USCD. So we have that the factors that increase suicide risk, such as chronic mental health conditions, so those that have already mental issues, social isolation, so this is something that was very widespread during this year, and financial difficulties, also something that a lot of students and young people were reporting. So those are very high risk factors. Then we have also, which is quite shocking, in my opinion, that a lot of mental health services and support for children and adolescents were disrupted during COVID. So even in schools, there was no counselor anymore to speak to, and a lot of centers didn't accept any visits anymore. Then also, we should not forget that all the school closures that have been done during this year might also have a big effect on big impact on the mental health of the young people, because school is not only a place where they are going to develop their academic skills, but it's the whole world, the whole exchange with peers, etc., that is totally destroyed when you are just in front of your screen at home, alone in your room. And then there is also an issue with unemployment, and the young people are more at risk to be in unemployment, and we probably will have more of those effects later on this year when everything now is opening again, but people do not find any jobs, and especially the young ones, which are maybe just finished with school or in school, etc. So how can we develop it? So the good thing about it is we can develop. So it's not something that we are born with. We have maybe the capacity to develop more easily our resilience muscles, but everyone can so develop and strengthen these muscles. So I picked out 4 of the, let's say, most common programs in the world. So we have Zippy's Friends, which are more for the little ones. We have the Penn Resilience Program, which is probably the most known around the world, because Seligman was part of the development team. Then we have the Australian cousin, which is Bounce Back, where we have children and, let's say, young teenagers. And then we have Spark Resilience, which is the one that Ilona developed and that we adapted to different contexts, also with Lucy. So Zippy's Friends is something running by Partnership for Children, and I put you the map where this is implemented in the world, so you can see that it goes even until China and South America, Canada, US, and Europe, and even Africa. So it's very widespread around the world. And the idea behind are 6 modules about feelings, emotions, how to communicate, how to develop friendships and sustain them, how to resolve conflicts, and how to manage change or a loss. And at the end, so how moving forward, bouncing back and moving forward. So this is a program that is designed to be implemented over 24 weeks, each 45 minutes lessons. So then we have the Penn Resilience Program. which was conducted for schools, and which is based on Ellie's ABC model and different explanatory styles. So we are not, I won't be the right person to make a conference about that, but it's all about the connection between our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. And there are more, nowadays there are more than 20 controlled studies that have been done and tested the efficacy of this program. So they also put a lot of investment in order to train the school personnel to teach this program. And I just want to show you the results. So it's preventing from moderate to severe depressive symptoms. So you can see the yellow one are those that were in the intervention group, so that those children were following the Penn Resilience program, and the turquoise ones weren't. So you see that the depression rates were much, much lower for those who benefited from this program. Just a little outlook on this ABC model. So it's the idea that we have an adversity, and that might be an exam, that might be somebody who lost a close person, an end of a romantic relationship. So it can be very large. That's what we were talking before. So it can be a little stress for someone and a big one for another person. Then we have the beliefs. So what we are thinking about the situation, and then the consequences. So how does that make us feel, and what are we going to do about it? So the behavior. I like to show it because it's very close to the Spark resilience program we're looking at later. And then included in the Penn Resilience, there are also modules about problem solving and coping strategies, etc. So it's a quite large program. So let's go on to the Australian cousin, the Bounce Back program. So it's very child and teacher friendly. It was done to be implemented in primary and secondary schools. There were a lot of revisions of the program, and also empirical validation as it has been done for Penn Resilience program. And their curriculum is based you can see on a lot of different modules. So yeah, starts with core values, social values, and then how people bounce back, courage, the bright side of life, emotions, relationships, humor, being safe, and success. So it's quite large, but going into very different directions, all related to our capacity to bounce back. And let's dig deeper into the Spark Resilience program. So it was initially developed for 11 to, let's say, 14, 15 years old, and we adapted it to 15 to 18 years old, to adults, and even to younger children. And Zippy's Friends is actually let's say they use Spark, the integrated Spark, in order to have something more for the bigger children, because Zippy's Friends we have seen is only for, let's say, until 8 years old. So it was developed in the UK, in, let's say, high-risk high schools, where the demand was coming to implement something in order to prevent those young people from getting on the wrong track. So it's based on 4 different fields, very important fields. So cognitive behavioral therapy, then the whole concept of resilience, of course, post-traumatic growth, and then we have positive psychology. So again, everything is connected to each other. And there have been multiple versions with 6 lessons, 8 lessons, 12 lessons, whole day workshops, etc., and then different age groups. So the idea is that students learn to change their interpretation and perception of adverse situations they might live or go through. Then also to understand their automatic emotional responses, so the emotions that are expressed due to the situation and the interpretation, and then also how to control our reactions that might not always be positive, to practice everything around nonviolent communication and assertiveness, and then at the end, so to build their resilience muscles, so which is all about positive psychology, strengths, positive relationships, PERMA, etc. So just to give you an idea, so the model around it is really, that's an acronym, SPARK. We have S for situation, so there is only the facts that count, so what actually happened. For example, there was a virus coming and was spread all around the world. And then we have the perception, so what happened? And what did your parrot say? I will show you later why parrot, but the idea is to have the little voice that we have in our head speaking to us can be compared to a parrot sitting on our shoulders, which is very appreciated by the teenage world. So then you have A for affect, so which is, or autopilot, which is how do we feel? So on the emotional level, we have R for reactions, so what did we do at the end? And then we have K for knowledge, so what is the consequences? What do we learn from it? What did that situation made me realize, etc. So just a little exercise to challenge your own perceptions. I gave you the selection of parrots we often use. So if you need to think about what is your most common cognitive bias or perception sitting on your shoulder, just take 1 minute or so to reflect on that. And you might want to share in the chat. And maybe there are 2 or 3. For example, myself, I often have the faulty one. I always feel somebody can say something very neutral and I will think that I'm directly attacked. So I will think it was again my fault. And so the consequences then are that we are then explaining to the children is, okay, you feel that you're faulty. So how does that make you feel? So maybe sad, maybe more anxious, maybe being very, let's say, worried, etc. And then this might affect then my reaction. And I might aggress the person and say, why are you again attacking me? But the person will say, no, there was no attack. There was just a fact. So this is very important to identify. So you can, the parrots are really synonym to our cognitive biases. And just to show you that the program was also tested. So the Spark Resilience program was tested in different contexts, gave you the references, the whole references, but you see that there were 2 studies done by Police Bonniwell in the UK world with girls from 11 to 13 years old in a high-risk public school. And it's interesting because in the first study, sensory processing sensitivity. So this is, let's say, high sensitive children to the outside world. And so, yeah, we would say it's hypersensibility. This is a moderator. So it means that those children who had moderate or strong sensory sensitivity scores also had better benefits from the programs, from the Spark program. So their depressive symptoms were lowering and their self-esteem was increasing. In the second study, there was also resilience scale used, which was increased by the end of the program. I mean, let's hope that it increases resilience when you are trying to develop resilience. And then there was also a study published in 2020 in Japanese high schoolers. And there were more variables tested, but quite interesting Again, the sensory processing sensitivity is an important moderator in this statistical data analysis. So you see also that self-efficacy was measured and increased after the program. Resilience, there was no effect this time round, and depressive symptoms decreased for those who were more sensitive. We also looked at the adult population. So this is the first huge led study among adults that we were running through the pandemic, during the pandemic. And you can see, so the orange lines are the intervention group scores, and the blue one are the control groups. And you see the 6 measures we had. So resilience significantly increased those who were trained in the program. Positive effect as well, meaning, the sense of meaning as well. The perceived stress reduced significantly, negative effect as well, and work engagement was not significantly, it was significantly different from those who weren't in the control group, but it was staying rather stable. And those who didn't benefit from the Spark resilience training experienced a decrease in work engagement. And just a little last share I want to speak about is a qualitative study we did with the teenage population. So with teenagers, it's always difficult to have huge samples. So what comes out when we did the content analysis, that a lot of children were expressing positive emotions, pleasure in the program. I really much enjoyed it. It was so joyful, etc. So you see the number of statements. So more than half of the children were saying something about the pleasure. Then we also had about relationship connection. So the children didn't know each other before. They were on Zoom, and they still had the feeling to really connect to each other. There was also self-discovery and discovery about what it is, resilience, and what comes with it, strategies. So a lot of the children mentioned that now they know that they need to take time before reacting, that they need to make things that make them happy before reacting, etc. So there was a lot of statements around strategies, and then they also some of them commented on the logistics and the organizational aspects of the training. So overall, they were very satisfied, and I think 8 out of 10 mentioned that when they had to explain to their some of their peers what resilience is about, they would speak about the parrots. So this is why I also wanted to bring them in for you, because this is always the highlight when we teach resilience to the children. So right on time, we finished. I just for yourself over the lunch break, for connecting to each other in the next 50 minutes, just think about what is the smallest step you yourself can take in order to reinforce your own resilience muscles, or maybe those of your own children, students, patients, whatever people you are meeting. And thank you very much for your participation, listening, and being here and making the world a better place.
Thank you.
And thank
so
you,
much,
Lucy.
Larissa.